The cake had 42 candles on it because my granddaughter Mia couldn't find more in the kitchen drawer, and she'd refused to let me turn 70 without fire. She lit them anyway, all 42. The smoke alarm in the foyer chirped twice before my daughter waved the dish towel at it from across the room, laughing in that high-pitched way she gets when she's nervous about something that isn't the smoke alarm. That's the thing I keep coming back to. She was laughing wrong. I'd lived in that house in Roanoke for 31 years. I knew every sound it made when something was off. The way the floor in the hallway upstairs ticks when the heat kicks on. The way the back door whistles if you don't shut it firmly. And I knew my daughter. Knew her since the afternoon the nurse handed her to me at Carilion Memorial, and she fit in one of my forearms with room left over. I knew when she was lying about a boyfriend in 10th grade. I knew when she was lying about why she dropped out of pharmacy school. I'd always known. I just hadn't wanted to. She'd brought her husband, of course. He stood at the kitchen island chopping strawberries for the cake the way he chopped everything, with the wrong knife, way too hard, like he was punishing the cutting board. He'd been my son-in-law for 9 years, and I still didn't know what he actually did for a living. Something in commercial real estate, supposedly. Something in fintech, sometimes. Something that required him to take phone calls in his Audi in my driveway and come back inside 10 minutes later with sweat on his upper lip. Mia was upstairs. She was 12, and she'd asked if she could read in the guest room instead of singing happy birthday, and I'd said, yes, sweetheart, you go on. I'd raised her mother to be sociable, and look how that turned out. Mia was quiet and watchful, and I liked her enormously. I'd come down the back stairs in my socks because my knees were bothering me and the carpet runner was softer than the front staircase. That's the only reason I heard them. If I'd worn shoes, if I'd come down the front, if I'd been 3 seconds earlier or later, none of it would have happened the way it happened. My daughter was at the dining room table. Her husband was leaning over her shoulder. They had their backs to the kitchen archway where I was standing, half hidden by the grandfather clock my wife had bought at an estate sale in Lexington in 1998. I could see them in the mirror over the sideboard. I could see her phone lit up in her hand, and I could see his face. "I'll keep him busy with the cake," she said. Her voice was low and flat, and it wasn't a voice I'd ever heard her use. Take Route 419. There'll be no traffic this time of day. Wendell's already at the house. He's got the new deadbolts and the alarm code from the company. Just stand there and watch him do it. Then come back and act normal. Her husband said, "What if he wants to go home tonight?" "He won't. He's staying here for dinner, and then we're driving him to the lake place tomorrow morning, remember? I told him we want him to relax for the weekend. By the time he tries to go home on Sunday, the place is ours. The listing's already with Coldwell Banker, and he can sit in the lake house and figure out his life from there. And if he calls a lawyer," she actually laughed. My daughter actually laughed at her own husband and said, "With what authority? He signed everything in March. He doesn't even remember signing it. He thought it was the trust paperwork from Mia." I'd been holding the railing of the back staircase with my left hand. I noticed, very calmly, that I had stopped breathing. I made myself start again. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way my doctor had taught me after the small heart episode last winter. The episode my daughter had used as the reason I needed to sign a few things. Just in case, Dad. Just so Mia's protected if something happens. I'd signed them in her kitchen. She'd brought me coffee. She'd had a notary present, some friend of hers from the gym. A woman whose name I couldn't remember now if you'd held a gun to my head. I'd signed 3 different stacks. I'd asked once what each one was. She'd said, trust documents for Mia, a health care directive, and a small power of attorney just for emergencies. A small power of attorney just for emergencies. I stood there in the back stairwell in my socks for what was probably 10 seconds and felt like a year. I thought about my wife. I thought about how, before she died in 2019, she'd looked at me from the hospital bed and said, "Promise me you'll be careful with her. She loves you, but she loves money more." And one day she's going to have to choose. I told her she was on too much morphine. I told her that wasn't a fair thing to say about our only child. She squeezed my hand and said, I'm not on enough morphine to be wrong about my own daughter. I went back up the stairs. I didn't make a sound. In the guest room, Mia was lying on her stomach reading something with a dragon on the cover. She looked up at me and saw my face and sat up immediately. Grandpa, what's wrong? Nothing, honey. I just need you to do something for me, okay? Don't ask why right now. I'll tell you later. I promise. Okay. I need you to go to the bathroom down the hall and lock the door and call my friend Wesley Tyndale. His number's in my phone, but use yours. Use yours. You have him in there. I made you put him in there last summer in case of emergency, remember? Call him and tell him to come to the house right now. Tell him your mother is here. Tell him to bring his briefcase. Tell him to come to the front door. Tell him to come around the back through the alley and to text me when he's 3 blocks out. Can you do that? She looked at me. She was 12. She nodded. And after you call him, you stay in that bathroom and you read your book. And if your mother knocks, you tell her your stomach hurts. Okay? Don't come out for anybody but me. Grandpa. Her voice was very small. Are we okay? I sat down on the edge of the bed and put my arm around her. Sweetheart, we are going to be more than okay, but I need you to be brave with me for 1 hour. Just one. She put her head against my shoulder, and then she got up and got her phone and went down the hall. I went into my own bedroom. I changed my socks. I put on the cardigan my wife had bought me for our 40th anniversary because I needed something of hers against my skin. I checked my face in the mirror. I practiced a smile. It looked terrible. I practiced it again. It looked acceptable. Then I went downstairs to eat birthday cake with the 2 people who were robbing me. My daughter had set the cake on the dining table and she'd lit the candles again, all 42, and she was beaming at me with tears in her eyes. Actual tears. I want you to understand that. My daughter could cry on command and always had been able to, since she was 3 years old and wanted a particular toy at the supermarket. Her husband was standing back by the window, his phone in his hand, his thumb hovering over the screen. He looked at me. I looked at him. I made my face do the thing I needed it to do. 70. I made my face do the thing I needed it to do. 70. Lord above. Make a wish, Daddy. I closed my eyes and I wished. I wished very specifically. Then I blew out all 42 candles in one breath, which I had not been sure I could do. And my daughter clapped, and her husband clapped, and his phone buzzed in his hand, and he looked down at it, and his face went a little gray. Honey, he said, I'm so sorry. I have to take this. It's the Charlotte office. Go, go, she said, waving him toward the front door. Tell them you'll call back. He was already gone. The front door clicked shut behind him. I heard his car door open and close, and then start, and then pull out of the driveway. He didn't go down to the end of the cul-de-sac and turn around. He pulled out in the wrong direction, toward Route 419. My daughter cut me a slice of cake. She put it on my wife's good china and slid it across the table to me. Daddy, I have to tell you, you look so handsome today. Mom would be so proud. I took a bite of cake. It tasted like ash. I said, tell me about Mia's school. How's she doing in math this year? And so we talked. We talked about Mia's school, and about my daughter's neighbor's divorce, and about a restaurant they wanted to take me to the next weekend. And the entire time I was watching the clock above the sideboard and counting. It takes 12 minutes to drive from my daughter's house in the West End out to my house off Brambleton in light traffic, which is what there is on a Saturday afternoon. 12 minutes there. However long the locksmith took, 12 minutes back, plus a buffer. My phone buzzed against my thigh at 26 minutes. I didn't look at it. I knew who it was. Daddy, are you sure you're feeling okay? You look pale. I'm 70, sweetheart. I look pale every day. I'm going to use the bathroom, all right? I went upstairs. In the master bathroom, I locked the door and looked at my phone. Wesley had texted in the alley. walking up to your back porch now. Mia let me in. She's a hell of a kid. I went down the back staircase the same way I'd come down the first time, in my socks, on the runner, silent. Wesley was at the kitchen table. He'd been my lawyer for 34 years and my friend for 31 of those, and he had his briefcase open and a yellow legal pad out, and he stood up when he saw me, and we didn't say anything for a second. He just looked at me. "How bad," he said. "She had me sign a POA in March. She told me it was a trust for Mia. Her husband is at my house right now changing the locks. She's planning to drive me to my lake place tomorrow and list the Brambleton house with Coldwell Banker on Monday." Wesley sat back down. He picked up his pen. He said, "All right, tell me everything from the beginning and tell me fast." I told him fast. I told him about the heart episode, about the coffee in her kitchen, about the gym friend notary, about the 3 stacks of paper. I told him my daughter had control of my checking account at Truist, because she'd been added as a joint signer 2 years ago after my wife died, when I'd been a mess and not paying attention. I told him I had separate accounts at Wells Fargo and at Vanguard that she didn't know about because Wesley himself had advised me, after my wife's funeral, to keep a few things compartmented from her. He'd seen something I hadn't. He'd been gentle about it. He'd been right. The lake house was an irrevocable trust I'd set up with him in 2015. My daughter didn't know that either. She thought it was in my name. The Brambleton house was in my name. The deed was in a fire safe in my home office. If her husband and the locksmith was standing in my house right now, they could change every lock in the building, and it wouldn't change a single name on a single document filed with the city of Roanoke. Wesley wrote everything down. Then he said, "First, the POA. We revoke it today. Right now. I have the language. I can draft it on this legal pad and we can sign it in front of any notary in the zip code. There's a UPS store 6 blocks from here that has one on staff till 5. Then we file the revocation with the clerk's office on Monday and send certified notice to her. By statute, the moment you sign the revocation, she has no authority. Anything she does with that POA after today is fraud." "What about what she's already done?" "Tell me what she's done." "I don't know yet. That's the problem." He nodded. "We'll find out. We'll find out. I have a forensic accountant I use, Eleanor Cho's husband. You remember Eleanor. He can pull every transaction on every account she had access to going back to March. We'll have a picture by Tuesday. If there are unauthorized transfers, we file a police report and we file civil, embezzlement, elder financial abuse, breach of fiduciary duty. Virginia takes this seriously. The county DA's office has an elder unit now. It's relatively new, but they're good. And the locks." He almost smiled. "The locks are nothing. The locks are theater. A locksmith changing a deadbolt on a house you own outright with a deed and a fire safe is just a man wasting brass. We can have a sheriff's deputy meet you at the property tonight, and you can have your own locksmith there inside an hour. It's your house. It's been your house since 1994. Nobody can take it from you by drilling out a schlag." I sat down. I think it was the first time I had sat down since I'd come into the kitchen. My legs felt like wet paper. "Wesley, she's my daughter. I know. She's all I have left of my wife. I know. I don't know how to do this." He put his pen down. He'd known my wife. He'd been at her funeral. He'd carried her casket. He looked at me across my own kitchen table and said, "You don't have to know how to do it. You just have to let me do it, and you sign where I tell you. We'll worry about your heart and your conscience next week. Today, we just protect what's yours, because if we don't do it today, by Monday, there won't be anything left to protect. Do you understand me?" I understood him. We drove to the UPS store in his car so my daughter wouldn't see mine leave the driveway. I told her before we left. that Wesley had stopped by because he was in the neighborhood and wanted to drop off some paperwork for a charity I sat on the board of, and would I mind running over to the office with him for 10 minutes to sign the release. She'd looked irritated. She'd looked at her watch. She'd looked at the clock above the sideboard. She'd calculated, and she'd realized she still had time before her husband got back, and she'd said, "Sure, Daddy, take your time." I signed the revocation in the UPS store on Williamson Road at 4:11 in the afternoon on my 70th birthday. The notary was a woman named Roxanne who had a small tattoo of a hummingbird on her wrist, and she stamped my paper and smiled at me and said, "Happy birthday, sir." I almost cried at the kindness of a stranger. I didn't. I held it. While we were in the car driving back to my daughter's house, Wesley made 3 phone calls. One was to a sheriff's deputy he knew. One was to a locksmith. One was to the forensic accountant. By the time we got back to the West End, he had a deputy heading toward the Brambleton house and a locksmith 40 minutes behind him. He dropped me off at the curb. He said, "Go back in there. Eat dinner. Smile. Don't say a word about any of this. Don't even hint. When she tries to put you in the car tomorrow to drive you to the lake place, you tell her you got a call from your cardiologist and you have to reschedule because of a follow-up Monday. You stay in town. You go home. You sleep in your own bed in your own house behind your own new deadbolt. Then Monday morning, you come to my office at 9 and we begin." Wesley, her husband, he's been on the phone in his car. Something's off about him, about his work. I noticed. I'm noticed for a while. We'll get to him. I went back inside Min. My daughter was on the couch in the den scrolling through her phone, and she looked up at me with a smile that was almost convincing. "All set, Daddy?" "All set, sweetheart." Wesley says hello. He says I'm a generous old fool for sitting on that board for free. She laughed. It was the laugh I'd heard her use her whole life, the real one, and for 1 second I forgot what she'd said in the dining room, and I almost broke. I almost sat down next to her and asked her why. I almost did it. I didn't. I sat down across from her instead in my wife's old reading chair, and I said, "Me and I are going to drive over to the Kroger on Electric Road in a little while to pick up some ice cream. Vanilla, the good kind. That all right?" "Of course, Daddy." "Take her. She'd love it." The son-in-law came back 20 minutes later. He had a sheen on his forehead and his hands were a little shaky, and he came in saying something cheerful about the Charlotte office and how everything was handled and what had he missed. He looked at his wife. She looked at him. They did a little thing with their eyes that they probably thought I couldn't see. He nodded microscopically. She smiled. She didn't know that at that exact moment, a Roanoke County Sheriff's deputy was standing in my driveway off Brambleton with his hand on the butt of his service weapon, asking a confused locksmith named, Wesley told me later, Dwight, a man with 3 kids and a clean record, who had been told by my son-in-law that he was working a legitimate job for the homeowner's son, to please step away from the door and explain what he thought he was doing on the property of a man whose name was on the deed and who had not authorized any work. She also didn't know that her husband, in his Audi, on Route 419, on a phone call he'd taken in my driveway 26 minutes earlier, had been talking to a man in Charlotte who was not at any office. The man in Charlotte had been calling to inform him that he had until Tuesday to come up with $340,000 or there would be, and I'm quoting Wesley, quoting his accountant who had a friend who knew people, a serious problem in his life that no amount of his father-in-law's real estate could solve. I learned all of this over the next week. The picture came together slowly, the way pictures do when you're looking at something you don't want to see. My son-in-law had not been in commercial real estate, or in fintech, or in anything else he told me. He had been, for about 3 years, running a small operation out of a leased office space in Charlotte that was technically a private equity fund and was practically a way to take money from elderly investors in 3 states and route most of it into a personal account in Belize. He'd lost most of it on bad bets and worse partners. He owed people. The people he owed were not the kind of people who took payment plans. My daughter. And I will give her credit for this. Even now, the smallest credit a father can give, had not known the worst of it. She had known he was in trouble. She had known they needed cash. She had not known that her husband had been signing her name to documents he'd shown her as routine, the way she'd shown me documents as routine. The way she'd shown me documents as routine. She had been a victim and a perpetrator both, in a way the law was eventually going to find very difficult to untangle. She had also, and this is the part I cannot get past, woken up on the morning of my 70th birthday and decided that selling my house out from under me was an acceptable solution. The forensic accountant found $92,000 missing from the joint trust account, drained in 7 transactions between March and the day before my birthday. He found another $40,000 that had been pulled from a brokerage account my daughter had POA on, a Schwab account she'd known about, and I had forgotten about, set up by my wife years ago for a grandchild who never came along on her side of the family. It was, by the standard of these things, not a lot of money. It was, by the standard of a father, every penny. I had Wesley file everything: the police report, the civil suit, the notice to the bank, the notice to the brokerage. I changed every account, every password, every beneficiary. I had the lake house deed quietly verified and the trust restated with a new successor. I changed my will. I left almost everything to a trust for Mia, with Wesley as trustee, with provisions that her mother could never touch a dollar of it for any reason. I left my daughter $10,000 in the letter. The letter was 3 pages long. I wrote it by hand. I don't remember most of what's in it now. I remember the last sentence. I forgave you the moment I heard you on the phone because you are my child and I will always be your father. But forgiveness is not the same thing as trust, and I will not see you again in this life. I have not seen her since. The case moved faster than I expected. My son-in-law took a plea 8 years, federal, for the investment fraud, which the FBI had apparently been circling for a while before any of this happened. His wife took a separate plea for her piece of the elder abuse, 18 months, suspended, with restitution and supervised probation. Wesley said, I should be angry it wasn't more. I told him I was tired, not angry, and I wanted it over. The men her husband owed $340,000 to went away, apparently, when the FBI started making phone calls. I don't ask too many questions about that part. His parrots, and this is the thing nobody saw coming, drove up from Greensboro the week after his arrest and came to my front door. His mother was a small woman, smaller than my wife had been, with a kind face that had been crying. His father was a contractor who'd worked for 40 years and built things with his hands. They sat in my living room, and his father said, Sir, we did not raise our son to do this, and we do not know how to apologize for him, but we have come to try. They asked if they could be a part of Mia's life. They said they had 3 other grandchildren, and they did not want to lose a 4th. I let them in. I let them in because Mia needed them, and because they had not done this, and because in their faces I saw a grief I recognized. We have Sunday dinner together once a month now, the 4 of us, me, his parents, Mia. We do not talk about their son. We do not talk about my daughter. We talk about Maya's school and the weather and a vegetable garden. His mother is trying to get me to start in my backyard. Mia lives with me full time now. The court agreed quickly. She turned 13 last spring. She is taller than her grandmother was. She is quieter than her mother ever was. She reads books with dragons on them, and she is going to be all right. She is going to be more than all right. I sit on my back porch most evenings, in the chair my wife bought me at a yard sale in Beaufort County in 2003, and I drink 1 cup of decaf coffee and I watch the light change behind the trees. Sometimes Mia comes out and sits with me. Sometimes she doesn't. The deadbolt on my back door is new. The alarm code is one only Mia and I know. The deed to this house is in a fire safe in a closet I had built specifically for the fire safe. I think about my daughter, of course, every day. I think about the little girl I taught to ride a bike on Wasena Park's bike path in 1986. I think about the teenager who slammed her door at me about a curfew in 1992. I think about the woman in a white dress walking down the aisle at Green Memorial in 2014, looking at me like I was the whole world. I think about her sitting at my dining room table on my 70th birthday, telling her husband where to go and when to be back, with my granddaughter upstairs reading a book about dragons, and I do not know how to hold all of those things in the same heart at the same time. I'm 71 now. I don't think I'll figure it out. I think you just carry it. My wife was right about her. My wife was right about her. And I was not on enough morphine to be wrong about that. And I think she knew, lying in that bed in 2019, that one day I would be standing on a back staircase in my own house, listening to my daughter try to take it from me. And she was trying to warn me with the last clear breath she had. I wish I had listened sooner. I wish a lot of things. But Mia is upstairs right now. She is doing her math homework. She called down the stairs 10 minutes ago to ask if we could have spaghetti for dinner. The grandfather clock in the dining room is ticking, and the back door is locked, and the lake house is in a trust, and the deed is in a safe. And the daughter I loved is somewhere in this city, living a life I am not part of, and my granddaughter is upstairs, and that is the shape of what I have left. It is enough. Some nights on the porch, in the chair, watching the light go, I am surprised to find that it is enough. I've turned this over in my mind 1,000 times on that back porch in Roanoke, and I keep coming back to the same simple shape of it. Nothing my daughter did to me on my 70th birthday came out of nowhere. It came from 100 small moments before it, each one a stitch in the same long thread. She borrowed money when she was 23 and never paid it back, and I let it go. She lied to her mother about pharmacy school, and I covered for her. She married a man whose work I never understood, and I never asked the questions a father is supposed to ask. Every time I chose comfort over clarity, I was teaching her that I would. The afternoon she sat at my dining room table and laughed about a forged power of attorney was not the first wrong thing that happened between us. It was the harvest of a field I had been quietly planting for 40 years. That is the part I want any father, any grandfather, any quiet man my age to sit with tonight. Cause and effect do not skip a generation in a family. The kindness you offer without honesty becomes the weapon used against you later. I loved my daughter into a person who believed she could take from me without consequence. And I have to own my piece of that, even now, even after everything. But the same law that taught me that lesson is the one that saved me. The moment I stopped my socked foot on that staircase and chose to listen instead of look away, a different chain began. I called Wesley. Wesley called the deputy. The deputy met Dwight at my driveway. My granddaughter Mia kept her head and locked herself in a bathroom because I trusted her enough to ask. Every link in that second chain was forged out of a small act of clear thinking under pressure, and that is what I want to leave you with. Wisdom is not a gift from heaven, and it is not luck. It is the willingness to see what your eyes are showing you, even when your heart is begging you to look away. My wife saw my daughter in 2019 and tried to tell me. I was not ready. 5 years later, I was ready, and the readiness cost me my only child, and it saved my granddaughter and my home, and what is left of my one short life. If you are a father reading this, do not be too proud to ask your lawyer hard questions. Do not be too tired to read what you sign. Do not be too lonely to keep something separate. Your children are not your enemies, but they are people. And people under pressure do things, and you owe it to the children who haven't done anything yet to stay sharp for them. I lost a daughter. I kept a granddaughter. I kept my house, my name, my breath, my Sundays. I am 71 years old, and I am still here. And that is not nothing. That is, in fact, almost everything.